Cool. Good morning. Let's see. I have to update my Facebook feed.
Well, while Brittany checks the audio, we'll get ready to go live here.
Here we go. Looks like we are live.
I could always get you a taller.
Perfect.
Well, looks like it's working. So what's up, and welcome to Under 10 Fitness. We are going live today with Dr. Grove here at the Colorado Springs Human Performance and Rehabilitation Center. I'm Drew Smith, your dude host. Brittany's checking the audio. So
Sorry.
Dr. Grove Higgins here. We're going to talk about how the whole body is connected. Now, Dr. Grove, I think that's important to talk about first as we start here. Should we really start thinking of the body as an entirely connected chain?
Yeah, for way too long, really, we've looked at the body as parts that interact. In reality, it's all one system that cannot be unintegrated. And when you do that, then you make life very difficult for yourself in the sense of, trying to lose weight becomes harder, trying to get rid of pain becomes harder, trying to train the system to be high performing becomes a problem as well. So yeah, it's all one system. It's all linked by one system. That's that nervous system, and everything else feeds into that. And that's where it has to make sense.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, how pain, tightness, and dysfunction in one area can lead to poor performance and problems in other areas, which was fascinating to me because I think about pain and you say, oh, my shoulder hurts, so that must be where the problem is. But that's not always entirely the case.
Not always. I mean, sometimes people walk in, and very infrequently in this clinic, where they have the knife stuck in them, right? And we know exactly why that person has pain there. But for the vast majority of us, probably 99% of our pain comes from just cumulative trauma of over long periods of time, doing bad movements, bad posture habits, things like that. And that's the cause of the pain. And so not all the time is that shoulder pain truly just shoulder pain. There's other things going on, especially when you1consider posture as part of that picture.
And the real question is, why do you have a knife in your shoulder?
Right.
Stop annoying your wife, and she won't stab you. Right?
I recommend an emergency room in those cases first.
First question to start it off here is, what is pain, and what types of pain are there?
There's multiple different types of pain, but first, at the very basic level, pain is just an action signal. It's your way for your brain, because all pain lives here. It does not live here. This is all input into the system. Most of us are walking around with things that could cause pain and don't cause pain, thank goodness, right? But pain is an action signal. Your brain trying to get your attention to say, hey, do something different, move. Fix me, right? That type of thing. And then different types of pain. There's the good kind of pain, the burn in the muscle when you're working out. That's the kind of pain that you want to have and you want to get good at producing. The other kind of pain, though, is pain in joints and just pain with regular movement. That should never happen. Even after a hard workout, you don't want pain to follow you into regular movements. Now, occasionally you're going to train and you're going to do things that are going to tax the system, and you might have a little bit of soreness, but soreness is different than pain. So there's pain from joints, there's pain in muscles when you're working them, and then there's soreness that follows you afterwards, and then there's the pain that just happens when you're just lying in bed. That's never good pain.
Like when you wake up and your neck hurts.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, what is that from exactly?
Well, one of my favorite comments that people have is, I must have just slept wrong.
Yeah.
And in my brain, I'm a very visual person. I imagine them, sleeping off the edge of the bed, on top of their head, folded
with
over.
a sack of rocks.
Exactly. Or their wife with their elbow on their neck, things like that. That's a wrong way to sleep. But for the most part, that should never happen. Now, that being said, sometimes it's your fault. It's a bad bed, too much of a pillow, things like that. And those are things that we need to fix there. But most of the time, if you're waking up with pain in the morning, it's because of all the stuff that you've done prior to that day, or that night actually, and all the time that led up to that point in time, in the activities that you do that cause irritation to those joints, and then overnight that inflammation sets in around joints and such, and then the nervous system goes, hey, I'm really in trouble and you need to help me.
So in your research and just your experience working with so many people, I mean, you've worked with hundreds, if not thousands of clients, What would you say might be a good rule of thumb on how often we should be moving? Because what I notice is if I'm sitting on the couch, propped up on my elbow or something for even 10 minutes, then I really do get some pain there.
Sure. The reality is that the only times you should stop moving is when you're purposely trying to rest, purposely trying to digest and that type of thing. Our world is very sedentary in general anymore. So sitting at desks, working on computers and such, but most of us have gotten into the bad habits of stopping to move, to do social media, to watch YouTube and things like that. So causes for sedentary lifestyles are now with us all the time, and it's becoming habit. And so we're moving less and less.
You guys are really tall. Let me just say that there.
I'm willing to slouch for you.
No, I should
I
have
did
picked a
that
bigger chair.
intentionally, give you the short stool.
So let's talk about kind of what we described in the intro. Pain in a specific area doesn't necessarily mean that that's where the problem is. How
Correct.
does that work?
So very, very easily, let's go back to that shoulder. Shoulder is very dependent on your posture. And if posture is not good, over time, that shoulder is going to get worse and worse mechanics built up through it. And so that's your cumulative trauma, both from muscles that are constantly too tight, causing scar tissue, causing adhesions and such like that, to wear and tear on the joint. So by that time, a lot of damage has already been done, but it's been the posture that's been the cause. So we can get in there and work on the shoulder and make it feel good today, but you're going to be back because we haven't fixed the main problem, which is that posture. That can also be driven by a lot of other things. The posture can be related to breathing, to gut function, and poor core control, poor pelvic floor for women in particular. And so it just becomes a cascade that results in that shoulder pain. And then oftentimes, again, that shoulder can have things that could cause pain, but in a lot of people are walking around and that does not cause pain, and then something else breaks. So your hips get tight because you're sitting so much, and because of that, that's just one more load on that nervous system, and the nervous system goes, I got to get his attention some way, and that shoulder is the easiest way because he's always abusing it, and boom, now you have pain. But it was that hip tightness in this case that pushed you over the edge.
Now, do you always know that, like you said, with the shoulder, sometimes the spine isn't moving correctly? Do you always know why it's hurting, or is it something that you kind of have to work with and discover and try different things?
Yeah, it's always an exploration. If you're doing the job of moving every day and acknowledging that pain is not normal, then you're noticing what causes pain, what things that you do the day before, what things you're doing right there and then that cause your pain, and then you can start to fix those. But if you don't, then that's when if you have a toolbox to start exploring, what links to that pain, because not all the time by moving the shoulder and correcting the posture is it going to fix that pain. Do you have a toolbox that allows you to explore the whole body and find out what affects that pain, and then you have the ability to fix it on your own.
Sounds like a lot of work. I'm going to have to start working out, right?
Yeah, we should probably both start working out, I guess.
So,
you mentioned a couple of weeks ago to Drew and I, and we've been fascinated by this ever since, that people undergoing anesthesia are super flexible.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential built up in the body that we just can't use. We've got more potential locked up than you'll ever be able to use, both in strength, range of motion, flexibility, agility, speed, and even vision for that matter. Most of us don't have vision as clear as we'd like it, thus the glasses. But that's really a function of this part of the body, the brain. And pain is very much the same thing. Flexibility is a really good example, and this is the part that I just get angry about every time I think about it. I'm one of the few chiropractors that went through surgical rotations in my education, and it should have clicked when I saw it, but watching individuals go through surgeries, an 80-year-old man under anesthesia is just as flexible as the 14-year-old female gymnast under anesthesia. It's a function of how that brain connects to that muscle, and once you turn off that connection, you're as flexible as you need to be. So the question that should have popped up in my mind is, why did that happen, and what really is flexibility? And the reality is it's your brain putting brakes on you to make sure you don't hurt it.
That's really
So flexibility
interesting.
comes down to a mentality, and are you able to reteach yourself? So, if you are having pain or tightness through a movement, are you able to get rid of that pain to be more flexible?
Most definitely, but you have to learn what the language is that you need to speak to the system in order to make it respond and to release the performance that you want out of it. So if you want to lift stronger, or if you want to be able to touch your toes even, you have to be able to speak to that system and to encourage that performance, because performance is something that we earn from our systems, from our bodies. It isn't something that we're given. Some of us are lucky. We start off really healthy, and we're able to maintain it even through some injuries. But over time, most of us, we use and abuse our bodies to the point that our nervous systems get tighter and tighter and tighter. And so then, touching your toes is the last thing it wants you to do.
So about how many muscles are in the human body?
Oh my goodness, you're asking me a question I should know because I teach anatomy. It's on the order of 200 some odd. Okay. And in that they're all driven slightly differently. So you might have flexibility in one set of muscles and no flexibility in another set.
Now I ask that because Brittany and I were in here, and we see you as often as we can. And can one muscle stop working, essentially, and where other muscles will pick up the slack?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the human body, is that it's awesome at compensating. So you do something that turns off that hamstring or that glute, and you barely skip a step. The body picks it up with other muscles, other movements in order to compensate. And so you're still able to squat, you're still able to walk and do the activities of daily living, and you don't notice it until that compensation starts to break down. And now you've got a problem that you have to pay attention to, otherwise it just gets worse. And it's fixing that compensation that's going to fix the problem.
Now, do you know why a muscle might turn off or just stop working?
Totally. One of the most common things, and happens to us every day, is that joints get jammed up and they get misaligned and such. So just think about all the times that you wake up in the middle of the night and walking to the restroom and you stub your toe. That's a real classic joint jam, right? Yeah. But we're doing it all the time with the types of shoes that we wear, on the hard surfaces that we wear, and some of the athletic things that we do. We're jamming up joints. But it's through movement that our bodies should self-adjust and fix themselves. But again, we're by and large more sedentary than we ever have been in history, and so we jam things up and then we stop moving.
And so that's why I feel so good after a performance session or a warm-up, where I just go through many drills, get my body moving, and then the muscles reactivate or start working again if I've jammed them up.
Definitely. Your nervous system is rewarding you.
There we go. I'm going to get myself a reward later. Now, are the muscles smart? We talk about muscle memory.
Yeah.
How smart are our muscles?
Okay. Comes down to this. Muscles are stupid. They know nothing. So there is no such thing as muscle memory. All of the memory, quote unquote, lives in that nervous system, and how you use those muscles, more specifically how you use those joints. Without the nervous system, the muscle is as long and as flexible as you need it, outside of injuries that you've caused it and things like that. But the muscle, by and large, itself really means not a lot. It's just the action end of the nervous system.
Well, hopefully muscles don't have feelings.
Aw,
Sorry.
poor little guy.
Now, you've worked with us, and we've seen some really cool things when it comes to testing the muscles. How do we test the muscles and make sure that they are working? Because we can't get in there and see what's going on.
Sure. One of the best ways is A, move, and then B, test ranges of motion. Right? Most of us, when we get up in the morning, we stretch to some extent. You throw the arms out to the side and pull back and stretch out the chest and the back and such like that. Excuse me. And that is probably one of the very first indications as to how healthy you are in the morning. If you're getting up and you're feeling really stiff and you're feeling sore and such like that, your nervous system is already telling you slow down, because I don't know what's going on yet. And so I'm going to give you some pain. I'm going to give you some restrictions and ranges of motion. But you can then use that same mentality of stretching, ranges of motion to test yourself throughout the whole day. And am I getting better or am I getting worse? Or after I did something, am I getting worse? And so that way you can start to narrow down what it is that you're doing in your life that's causing you to get worse. Because if you're not practicing getting better, you are getting worse.
Yay, that's what we always say.
We stole that from you.
Yeah, we did.
We're not that smart.
Sorry.
And it's something that we do almost instinctually. We get up in the morning and we stretch, but you want people to do this a little more purposefully.
Yeah, pay attention, right? Respect the way that you feel. You know, we get so good at suppressing how we feel all the time. You know, we'll sit through a meeting needing to go to the restroom for a half an hour. The rest of the animal world goes, hey, I need to go to the restroom, and they do what they need to do, right? So they're always respecting that signal that allows them to stay performing optimally, because for them, survival is performance. It's who's going to run faster. It's who's going to move away from danger quicker, right? And we've gotten really good at suppressing that aspect of ourselves. And unfortunately, over time, that's damaging us to the point that our nervous systems begin to trust us less and less and less and say, you're not surviving well. And so I'm going to give you pain all the time, or stiffness and limitations all the time, or at least hold back on strength all the time. And we're really the ones at fault. You've earned the body that you have and the performance that you have.
We could call this social pain or social dysfunction. It's caused by things that we have to do in our daily life. You're at work, you're in an important meeting. You can't just get up and lay on the ground and start doing some corrective exercises.
No, but there are some easy little things that you can learn to do, like little ranges of motion in the middle of a meeting and such like that, that you can do under the table of sorts. But then also looking at your life, and it's just part of our culture now, we have to time things, right? So timing meals, timing, getting adequate hydration in, getting your movement in a very purposeful, time-dependent manner, so that way you're never falling behind on those things.
I think the world is catching up. You see a lot of these desks now that are, they've got a pulley system and weird levers, and they raise and lower, and some of them even had treadmills.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to be doing an ergonomic assessment for a company tomorrow, actually, about 3 hours between two of their sites. And they want their workers feeling good, because they know that if their workers are feeling good, they're going to be more productive, they're going to stay around for a lot longer, and they won't have to pay out for the typical day-to-day type of wear and tear that working causes.
Now, what I've noticed is that sometimes I'm having a pain during a certain movement, whether I'm just working at my day job or if I'm working out. If I slow the movement down, I can usually move through the point where I would have had pain if I was moving quickly. How does that work, and how can we incorporate that?
Yeah, so the nervous system is always monitoring what's going on. So when you get pain, oftentimes all you have to do is either limit the range of motion a little bit, change the speed, make it go slower. Right? Give yourself a little bit of more rest time in between things in order to kind of reset, so that way the nervous system can say, I'm all right. And just by moving a little slower through those sticking points, even though it might be more difficult, can eliminate pain almost entirely, because the nervous system is now being able to keep track of what you're doing and can say, pain is necessary or not. And if you can't slow down enough and you can't move enough and get rid of that pain, that's where you have to raise your hand and say, I need some help.
So we've actually have some actual exercises that you can show us.
Sure.
Now, before we do that, talking about... well, actually, let's go ahead and go to that. I'll ask my question here at the end. So you've got some exercises that you can show Brittany. You've worked on her bicep curl. So Brittany is going to compete in a powerlifting competition. And you noticed that is it the brachialis muscle? Was it firing?
It was one of them, yeah. It was one.
Right. So let's look at the bicep. How many muscles are in the bicep here, or in this area?
Yeah, really, you've got two muscles. They've got a couple of different heads in a certain case, like that bicep. We've got two different heads on it, and then that brachialis, which is the deeper muscle underneath that really does the job of keeping that elbow aligned really well. And they all have to work in concert with all the other muscles in the arm in order to make it work well. So when you're doing a heavy lift, like Britt is going to be doing, doing, then they have to be working in concert with each other in order to get a optimal force production, so that way you can lift heavy things and also to protect that joint.
So if we can, we'll step over here to the side here, and you can maybe show us some drills and exercises that Brittany can go through to help make sure that, and test the bicep to make sure it's working.
Sure,
Yeah.
definitely. Okay,
So here, I'll hijack some audio, and I'll work this camera here. So if you're watching on the Colorado Springs Human Performance and Rehabilitation Center page, you can see what's going on. And
so one thing that ends up happening is that sometimes we start losing ranges of motion and don't use a full range of motion on that bicep. Now, one of the easiest things to make sure that you're using the bicep correctly is just learning what that sucker does. And really what the bicep does is it does this. Here, I'll turn you sideways so everybody can see, is that what it does is it pulls the arm forward, it curls the elbow, bends the elbow, and brings the elbow up and across the body. And so that's the full action of that bicep. And by and large, none of us really train that. So what we're going to do here, just to reinforce that connection and teach her brain how to use this bicep, this arm motion correctly, is we're actually going to train that specifically all the way through its range of motion and reinforce that connection. So easy thing to do here is bring that arm straight back like she's stretching that muscle. So now she should be able to feel that muscle. All right? It's not a huge stretch, but it's a stretch. And now she's going to start to move it through its range of motion. So I'm going to have her start by actually curling the elbow, or flexing the elbow, bringing that elbow forward, and flexing that muscle like she's trying to bodybuild here, bringing that elbow up as far as she can, which is much better than she did before, and then bringing it across her body, which is actually really hard. And you saw how her elbow dropped. So her body's not using her shoulder well doing bicep motion. She really would like to have it high and across her body as best as she can. And now that brain is going, okay, there's where my bicep is. So let's try that again.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting, right? I mean, you do some of these and it's a workout already. All right? So she's going into that stretch again. She's going to flex that bicep. She's going to continue to flex that bicep as she brings that elbow forward towards the ceiling and across her body. But notice she got better at it, and she needs to get even more better, especially if she wants to be strong. And that's how we educate the nervous system as to how to use that bicep the best.
Yeah, I feel it in my chest too.
Great.
all right. And now we've actually got a question here on the Facebook page. Amanda is asking, what sort of techniques do you recommend, Dr. Groh, for increasing range of motion, specifically for spinal flexion? And you can pull that microphone right off there.
Yeah, for spinal flexion, so spinal flexion is a little bit more complicated than just a bicep type of movement, in the sense that you have to have activation, the proper activation and length in hamstrings and the glutes, as well as those low back muscles. So here's actually a couple of easy things, and I don't know if we can see Britt's ankles.
We can.
We
yes.
can. All right. That's right. Okay, so we're gonna look at her hamstrings and glutes, and then we're gonna work our way up. So to increase that forward flexion flexibility from the hips and the spine, here's a couple of easy things to do. First, we're going to check the ankles, because the ankles give us a lot of information that allow us our nervous systems to give us length, so that way we can use those hamstrings properly. So we're going to do a couple things called some ankle tilts. So she's going to put her foot forward slightly. She's going to then tilt her ankle out to the side, and what she'll feel is a little bit of a pull to the outside of her ankle. So as she does that about 3 or 4 times, what she's doing is opening up the joint, and she's got good flexibility in that joint, and that's allowing her nervous system to see what's happening at the floor in order to allow that whole backside force to be able to be utilized properly, and for her to have the proper flexibility. I probably should have had you touch your toes here first.
Oh, okay.
So here's an assessment. Here's how you can assess this, okay? So if she does this, puts the feet together, knees are straight, and she just nice and easily goes down and stops where she feels tension, right? So at that point she feels tension. Where do you feel that, Britt?
My hamstring.
in hamstrings and and she might even feel it in the low back. She doesn't want to feel pain. And then these drills, now we can employ them and then see what the result is. So again, she's got the ankle tilt, so we'll do the other ankle and just do that roll out to the side, feeling that little pull to the outside of the ankle. And now she's also got decent arches, so we're going to have her do a medial one. So she's going to step sideways like a lunge, and she's going to put her weight on the right leg, and she's going to drag her left ankle into a tilt to the inside, where she's going to feel a little bit of a pull here. It's a little less of a pull in this instance. And then she'll do it to the other side. Good. And she's very controlled. She's been doing this a while, so she knows what she's doing. And now she'll put her feet together and try her toe touch again. Okay, so we got a little bit more, which is great. That's what we want to see. And she's not just warming up. The reality is warming up doesn't mean a whole lot because our bodies don't like to get any warmer than at 98.6 degrees. So now she's going to do some knee circles. So her toes are going to go straight forward again. All right, and she's going to, from completely straight, she's going to do some knee circles. She's going to break to the side and drive her knees around in a circle. The hamstring's attached to the knees, and so we're just getting that one joint moving. Now go the other way. Good. And then we'll go to the opposite side and look at her hips, and then we'll actually do something for the spine. Okay, try your toe touch again. Good. Good. And sometimes when you do one of these drills, you might actually tighten up, but that might tell you something about where your tightness is coming from. Okay? And now she's going to do some hip circles, and we're just going to do one very easy one. She's going to just lunge forward just a little bit, and this back hip, she's going to do a hip circle on. So where she's making a circle around the hips. And no, I did not steal this from the pole dancing community.
This one's hard for me.
Good. Now she's going to switch legs. Keep that back knee straight. Front knee can move as much as it needs to. Good. You can tell she's a little tight in her hips.
Yeah.
Which is probably some of the source of why she gets back pain from time to time. Okay, so now she's going to test again. And that actually gave her probably more than the ankles did. Okay, now we're actually going to do something for that lumbar spine, and we're going to do what's called a lumbar circle. So I'm going to actually put this down so I can talk this through and help Brittany feel this.
Lumbar circle, that sounds intense.
So in this case, the target is this area through here. So as long as she's not having pain, we're going to actually make this movement happen. So she's going to stand nice and tall. She's going to now arch to the side like she's bending over a fence, and now she's going to roll forward, hanging on that low back. So most of us, when we stretch forward, we never really hang on the low back. We get it in the glutes and in the hamstrings. So she should feel tension through this low back all the way to the side, and then back up from there. Now we could go to a circle to the back as well, but we're just going to go to the front, and she's going to roll forward. And in doing this, she's flexing this whole lumbar spine area. And as you can see, she stays pretty flat. So she doesn't have as much flexion in that lumbar spine. But this is where it starts. She can feel that tension through here, and we can expand that range of motion slowly over time. Okay.
All right. Well, that was a very long answer.
Sorry.
No, that's very good. So these are some simple drills that you can do to help get that range of motion in a spinal flexion.
Yeah, most definitely. And it also allows you to start identifying what might be driving what. So sometimes when we feel, tight touching our toes, it's not our back. It's those hamstrings, and it's the ankle that's driving it or whatnot.
And you mentioned that it's important to test, and you should always test before you do a movement because then that's how you can tell if it's working.
Yeah, and eventually you figure out what the links are. And so you don't have to keep testing all the time. But in the beginning, by testing, you start to narrow down where are my biggest problems, where am I going to get the biggest payoffs. Because the last thing you want to do is waste your time. Life is too busy to sit there and do 5 things, 4 of which aren't working.
And that's important to build your toolbox. When you know what's going on, you can address the problem, maybe do 2 or 3 tools, and usually you can find the problem.
Yeah, most definitely. And this is the reason why I would rather become people's coaches rather than their doctors, in the sense that, yeah, you're coming in with pain, but you need to know what's causing you to have that pain. And again, sometimes I have to pull the knife out type of a scenario, and those are easy. But the hard part is taking somebody that's had pain for a long time or have been building up to pain for a long time, teaching them a toolbox, and then getting them comfortable with using it constantly so that way they can make themselves better.
Would you say that spinal flexion and mobility might be one of the biggest problems that you see?
Yeah, I mean, almost everyone has back pain at one time or another, right? Almost everyone has that tightness in the back of their legs at one time or another. It's probably one of the most universal things that happen, because, especially in our modern lifestyle. And so learning just how to deal with that is probably going to put you on the road to fixing a lot of other things.
In exercise science as it is today, I've studied a couple of the most popular ones, and they always teach that when you're deadlifting and doing movements, you need to have a really flat back, and the spine needs to be moving in one chunk almost.
Right.
Though in a perfect world, to feel good and move good, the spine is made up of a bunch of different vertebrae. Should they be able to move independently of each other?
Yeah, yes. And certain movements, so, technical movements like that have certain forms that allow us to get certain advantages on weights and in movements. And so then that technique has to be programmed in, but not at the expense of losing motion in other areas, and in particular the whole spine. I was at the weightlifting championships for Colorado this last weekend, fixing athletes, and one of the number one things is that they have spines that generally don't move. And the spine is like a chain, and if it doesn't have movement through the whole chain, something is going to break, because something else has to move more, and that's the area you usually have pain in.
And one of the most exciting things that you've been working on lately is a shin box movement.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things to do in life is to move myself and teach people simple ways that they can start to move that allow them to do two things. One, improve themselves, but B, be able to specifically feel differences from side to side that allow them to identify where they have a problem. And the shin box is one of those great tools. And so we utilize it a lot in the clinic, but then we produced a video so that way individuals like yourself, no matter where you are in the world, can learn to use it and then use that to communicate where they have pain and problem that they can't fix on their own.
So as we're wrapping up here, do you mind maybe just giving a little tutorial on one? Because the shin box, it's a lot of moving parts, right?
Yeah, it is. And I'm going to show you the basic shin box itself, and then and because that's what most people are going to see and know, and then from there, you can expand on it by getting the video or calling up and learning it, right? But I'm going to show you the most basic aspect of what the shin box is, and then from there, we'll show you the beginning part of it. So if you sit down all the way, so sitting upright. Okay, the shin box is this position where the knees are at 90-degree angles to each other. So she's going to let that knee fall to the side there, and she's going to put this knee right behind the foot. And she's sitting up as tall as she can. So that's a shin box position, okay? But now we're going to have her move it from side to side. And she's been doing this, so she knows what she's doing here. You might need to move that way just a little bit and turn yourself that way just a little bit. There you go. And now she's going to shift, do what's called a hip shift, from side to side. Now what this movement does, besides loosening up the hips, is that she's having to learn how to use her posture to drive the movement, because if she stays flat backed, she won't get her knees down, or if she stays flexed, she won't be able to get her knees down, and she's also having to breathe. And so it's teaching several principles of motion all at the same time, but she's going to be able to feel where tightness is and where it is on one side that it doesn't exist on the other, which is going to help her identify what she needs to fix. So here's a really basic way to start the shin box. So if you lay on your back, there you go, arms out to the side, and she's going to start in this position with her ankles together, knees together, and she's going to let her knees fall from one side, stretching and twisting through the low back here, and she can feel that pull all the way up to her shoulder and back to the other side. And you're going to do that 3 to 5 repetitions. So we'll have her do that 3 repetitions. And then I'm going to have her lay on her side, so she'll lay this way, keeping the knees bent. And now we're going to do that same twist, but from the top down. So she's going to have her hands out in front of her, and she's going to take this top arm. She's going to reach back, watching that hand as she brings that shoulder towards the floor. Ideally, you should be able to put that shoulder on the floor without the hips moving. And you can see that she's got some tightness. But she earns it with all the activities that she does, okay? And then she'll, of course, flip over and do it to the opposite side. Good. And again, you can see slight differences in the way that she moves. Her hips actually move more with her left rotation here in her spine. So now she's going to lay on her back, and now we're going to open up those hips a little bit. She's going to take her right ankle, place it over her left knee, and she's going to draw that left knee towards the floor. And she'll do that a couple of times in this position. And then she's going to move that foot out to the side here just a little bit to change the angle. So that way the stretch is slightly different. And she's just going to continue doing that until she gets that knee almost completely in line with the hip. And of course we do this on both sides. And now she's going to do the actual shin box, but lying on her back, which nobody tends to do, at least in the shin box training. She's going to put her feet about shoulder width apart, or a little bit wider, and now she's going to let her knees fall into that shin box. And now you can really see how it's pulling through the whole body. And so now you can see how the whole body is linked together. And you don't want it to be too linked together, because then the hips are driving how the shoulders are moving to a great extent. And again, that shoulder pain that she might be having in the future might be because her hips are tight.
All right, we can wrap it up. Join us all back here. There you go. Yes. Good job, Brittany. Here, give me a high five for that. You're a very good model and demonstrator there. So,
Oh, thank you.
well, that and the shin box, it's a movement that anybody can try. It's a movement that you've been really working on.
Yeah, I mean, we've been refining it over literally a decade. Started really using it on myself, but then with my broken, ill, and injured soldiers that worked with over a long period of time, and we took individuals who were pretty broken and such, and started teaching them, and they're all able to get better from it. So it's been one of those things that we've just used consistently for a long time.
And you put together a really good videos and series about the movement, and that was just a piece of it. So you can try that at home. You can. I've noticed that going through those movements right there, I do that in the mornings, and that's part of my routine. And it was literally just what she did right there. It's not any fancier than that. You can do those movements and usually get some adjustments too.
It's the fundamentals of movement right there, very basically. And things that you continue to do consistently, you will get consistently better at doing, not just from a skill standpoint, but your body will continue to adapt to that motion until you're as flexible as you need to be.
Well, that's going to wrap it up. Again, we'll give the resources if anybody wants to find that shin box. Tons of videos there that are set to a nice background, too. You took the video here in the beautiful Colorado Springs, so you're doing these movements while watching the Pikes Peak Mountains.
It's actually very beautiful. You get to see Pikes Peak in the background and the beautiful Colorado blue sky that seems unreal. So
Yeah.
Yes, and Amanda said thank you for the description on how to get more mobility throughout the spinal flexion there. So what is the website if somebody is interested in that shin box?
You can go through our clinic website, which is Colorado Springs Human Performance and Rehabilitation, so cshpr.com, or you could go through moveperfect.net, and both places you can find the shin box.
Yes, and it's just a flat fee, and then you have access to it, and you can work through that movement.
And we've expanded the content on there, so if you're a trainer or a coach, there's new content that we shot in conjunction with the NSCA for their instructors and their staff, and so now you can learn how to teach it.
And that movement's going to be somebody who's in a squatted position where they're driving through the hips and moving, because that's really going
to... most definitely. It's great for athletes, but I consider even stay-at-home moms athletes. They're just doing it at the stay-at-home mom pace and in that sport.
That is one of the, yes, you consider everybody in it.
What is good pain? What is bad pain? Otherwise, stop, analyze it, figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, if you can't drill it out yourself, then go get it fixed.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I think that was very informative.
Yes.
Did you learn something, Brittany?
Absolutely. Always.
It was a lot of fun, as
Always.
always.
Well, I learned that we have 2 people watching us live right now. So
Hi,
there you go.
guys.
Well, what's up? Yeah. Well, thank you very much. This was a lot of fun. Again, I am Drew Smith, your dude host.
I'm Brittany Smith, your lady host.
And Dr. Grove, if anybody else wants to look for more that you've got coming up, do you have anything interesting that we should look out for?
We've got a training. If you're really interested in learning about movement and how to change your own movement, but especially if you're a coach of at any level and want to be able to help people, up on our Facebook site, especially if you're watching it, you can find this. We have an event in April. I can't give you the date right now off the top of my head, but it's part of our system, the Z Health system, that Pat Marquez, my lead trainer and coach, that will be teaching it. And you will find out exactly where your performance comes from, where your pain comes from, and you will learn a huge toolbox of tools to start fixing that. And in just 3 days worth of pretty intensive seminar, but it's well worth it.
I'm going to that one. It's April 7th through the 9th.
Thank you.
Yes, so I will be there, April 7th through the 9th. Well, that's going to do it for us. Again, this is Under 10 Fitness and the Colorado Springs Human Performance and Rehabilitation Clinic. I'm Drew Smith. As always, remember,
Stay motivated.
now let's awkwardly shut everything down.